I used to get on Spain a lot for business, and it's like I was bringing that wine back.
Mr. Carter, can you hear me?
Now you can, right?
How are you, sir?
Good. How about you?
Good.
I'll go off video.
Way. Page down in the Chromebook.
Facebook.
Oh, I'm down now. What's the matter?
I can't do that.
What? Type?
Every time I hit the thing, I hit the wrong letter.
Oh, I misspell stuff all the time because my fingers have hit the wrong stuff.
Have you heard anything from Chris Gibson?
No. Welcome, everyone. I want to call to order the North Topsail Beach Board of Aldermen meeting for Wednesday, November 12th. And I want to welcome everybody here tonight. And what I'm going to do is turn it over to Alderman Leonard for the invocation tonight.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless our town and keep it a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray for your guidance to enable this board to work together to make fair and informed decisions tonight. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We further ask that you keep a particularly watchful eye over our forward deployed service members who are serving in harm's way, as so many of them at various times have called North Topsail Beach home. This is especially significant as we celebrate the 246th anniversary of the founding of the United States Marine Corps today and observe Veterans Day tomorrow, and as we also both reflect upon the loss and honor the selfless sacrifice of Gunnery Sergeant Darrell W. Boatman, United States Marine Corps, one of our own, who we lost 16 years ago last week as a result of wounds sustained in combat action in the Al Anbar province of Iraq. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Amen. Alderman Leonard, do you want to lead us in the pledge as well?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the next would be a request for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
You got that, did you? There's a lot of firsts and seconds there. All in favor? Okay. The next item on the agenda would be the open forum. Do we have anybody signed up?
I have a question. Many of you travel all the time. And you've seen on your motel bills, all the, you got $100 motel bill, then you got 16 other taxes underneath it. Is it possible for our town, in addition to the occupancy tax, charge 0.5% of percent going toward beach nourishment or to the beach? I've seen them in other towns for bond issues, for stadiums, for you name it. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I do want to thank all the veterans here for their service.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else, Danielle? Okay. All right, the next would be Mr. Way's update, the coastal engineer. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, let's have your first manager's report.
Thought you were gonna miss it, didn't you?
Shoot.
Almost skated.
Almost. Thank you, Mayor. Before I start my report, I just want to quickly say thank you to everyone, Chief Governor, the board, Mayor, all the staff. I appreciate everyone's assistance as I started. My first day was on October 18th, as you know. So everyone's been very helpful with getting me up to speed quickly. So I definitely appreciate all of your assistance and updating me on all of the current projects. So I'm honored to be here and to get started. So thank you all.
Okay.
The first item that I have on my report is the 2021-2022 FEMA Special Obligation Bond Fall Project. On November 8th, we had the LGC Kickoff conference call. The meeting was productive and information presented was well received by the LGC. FEMA project worksheets were provided, and Mr. Carter of DEC Associates talked through 2 of the FEMA approved projects for LGC approved SOBs and further explained separating the FEMA SOBs into the 2 tranches. Lawrence approval was $13,696,691, and the Dorian approval was $3,505,303. As explained in the last meeting, by use of the FEMA SOBs, the town will not have to use the beach fund to provide the cash flow for these two projects, and we'll be separating them again into two tranches. Mr. Way, the town engineer from ATM, explained we would be using the truck haul method for the sand, which is a method the town currently uses for other FEMA funded projects. Due to the size and scope of the projects together, the sand will be placed primarily in phase 5 and phase 1 of beach. During this meeting, the LGC actually encouraged us to provide our submittal to them as early in December as possible, noting that they had a December 7th agenda deadline at that point. Based on the information from the LGC and the bid opening for the phase 5 truck haul being scheduled on December 2nd at 2:00 p.m., it is recommended that the board cancel the December 2nd meeting and schedule a special meeting for Monday, December 6th at 6:30 p.m. This will allow us time for the bids to be reviewed, presented to the board, and make a recommendation. Mr. Carter provided updated information today after speaking further with the LGC, and they feel we will be a month early, and December for them is pushing it. Based on the permitting concerns at this point, it's just going to be too tight of a deadline. So there's been a lot of discussion between all parties involved, between Mr. Carter, Mr. Way, and myself, and at this point, I just drafted an outline for the board, a tentative timeline considering all information that I've received up through the end of today at 5 o'clock. December 2nd will be the bid opening, as I said. December 2nd, we will, through December 6th, we will go through the bid review process as I previously outlined. The December 6th board meeting, we would then recommend award pending permits with a not to exceed amount with description and adopt the initial SOBs resolution. Now, the initial SOBs resolution is non-binding and simply will just lay out the intent of the board. So it's not committing at that point in time to go forward. It's just laying out our intent to be able to present that to the LGC. December 8th through January allows us the necessary time to receive the permits, the audit report, and receive rates from PNC and reviewed by the LGC. January 6th, we would then adopt a contract for phase 5 truck haul contingent, of course, on LGC approval. February 1st, the LGC meeting would take place and we should receive approval. If all goes well, February 3rd, adopt the final SOBs resolution. February 4th, then you would be able to theoretically commence with hauling of sand.
Questions on that part first?
Sure.
Just a couple of clarifications. I happened to sit in on the first meeting with them. The SOBs are special allegation bonds, which I think Mr. Carter uses all the time. It's a unique thing that he created. We do not use the full faith and credit of the town, that the collateral for the FEMA money is actually FEMA to do that. Second thing too is there seems to be a misunderstanding among a number of people. FEMA does not front us the money. We have to front the money to get reimbursed. Generally, they're holding back about 25%. And so I think that what he's done to create this for us makes a lot of difference. And then the other clarification is this is the second project. We're starting the other project probably next week, which is the stuff we've already approved. Right. So I just want to make sure that's correct. Right?
Yes, correct.
So my only question was, if the meeting is on February 1st with the LGC, do we have everything we need to pull together other than the bids to present to them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That gives us enough time at that point where we should, because the main concern really is the permitting.
Okay.
And we're at that point confident that everything would be in place.
And also Mr. Carter told us he's got the okay with the banks.
Okay.
So it basically, when we get LGC approval, the funds will be available.
Okay.
Mayor, may I clarify something?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carter, and I understand what Alderman Grant Mr. Carter developed the use of the special obligation bonds to enable towns to get essentially bridge loans, so they don't have to forward or front the money while they wait for the reimbursement. General Assembly created this.
Does anybody else have questions on this particular topic before we move on? Because it is really important. No, and we do have Mr. Carter on the line as well, if anybody has any questions for him. Okay, turn back over.
Well, the only comment, the schedule looks pretty tight. If the LGC has a difficult problem approving our request on February 1st and the trucks start rolling on the 4th. That's all.
I want to have Mr. Carter opine on that, since I think he feels pretty good about where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, would you like to?
I think on the first.
Mr. Carter, can you hear us?
I can. Did you ask me something? I did not hear that.
Mayor Pro Tem Benson had commented that he was just a little bit concerned with the tight schedule between February 1st and the 4th on commencing the Sand Hall project. Alderman Grant had mentioned that you feel pretty confident that we'll be okay there. So I just didn't know if you wanted to add anything into that.
Well, we will certainly know well before February, the first meeting in February, the recommendation of the staff to the local government commission itself. That recommendation we'll know well before. Now, obviously, the local government commission is a board. They do address this, but they have already approved at least 4 other of these same exact financings. So thankfully, we are not the first. And so with all those things in play, I'm not worried about that, but I think it's a good question.
Thank you, sir.
The CO's project, the overnight temperatures and soil temperatures in early November started getting too cold for them to continue. So the contractor doing the planting will resume as soon as possible in the spring with a targeted date of May 1st. Of course, that's dependent on weather, but that's the tentative start date at this point. I have confirmation that they will in fact go back and replace any sprigs that do not survive. 210 Seashore Drive condemnation. The notice of administrative hearing was published on November 8th. Mr. Kennedy completed the required follow-up inspection on November 2nd, with final notices being posted and mailed. The hearing now is scheduled for November 16th, 10 a.m. at the South End Fire Station.
On those hearings, when they happen, is there any reason that you all need the board, any members of the board there? No. Okay.
I mean, if you have relevant testimony, you want to testify,
Just checking.
you're welcome to come and observe.
Thank you.
In regards to the future list of condemnations, Daryl Johnson is scheduled to start work this Friday. He will be assisting us with preparing a list of future condemnations for the board to consider. He will work 1 day a week on Fridays as necessary. And again, he'll be starting this Friday.
And are we still utilizing Ms. Oxley to help with that administrative part of the process too, or will Daryl be able to pick up the whole thing?
We will be coordinating with Ms. Oxley if needed, but we shouldn't unless it, gets to another level where we need Mr. Eads or Ms. Oxley to get into, then we would call upon them, but initially, no.
So you have the process pretty well identified at this point. So,
Yes.
okay, perfect.
We have the notice templates
Perfect.
that we can use going forward.
Thank you.
Public Works completed a damage assessment on Monday as a result of the nor'easter and king tides, and reported that the only access of the towns that incurred damage was at Port and Oyster. All others are intact. There was a lot of debris wash up. The crew picked up Monday, and they will likely be picking up throughout the remainder of this week. It's estimated that once complete, there'll be approximately 2 tons of debris, which consists mainly of sand fencing. An after action report is forthcoming, and it'll be combining a picture essay that Mr. Benson had put together and the damage assessments reported by Public Works.
And then I know I have a bunch of questions, but do we get to get reimbursed for any of that debris removal? Or no, it's just not enough? Okay.
Holiday lighting, Public Works will be installing snowflakes once the storm debris is removed next week. We gotta
Yay.
get through the storm debris pickup first, and then we can focus on the holidays.
I do have a comment about that. We were in Surf City last night and they already had their lights up. A little bit early, I think.
A terminal drawing fact sheet has been posted on the town's website for reference. It can be found under, on the town's website, under current project documents at the bottom, labeled terminal drawing fact. One of the major projects that's been ongoing that I came into was the town hall renovation. And there's been a lot of questions on where we're at with that. So I just wanted to provide a complete update. So that's why you're receiving a page of updates, just to give you an idea of what's been completed in the last 30 days and where we're going in the next 30 days and when it'll be completed. The OAC meeting was held on November 3rd. Work performed in the last 30 days by the general contractor included the interior doors being delivered, with them, a third of them being complete without the hardware. The ceiling tiles are complete as of now. Interior lighting is complete. Mechanical and electrical trim out complete. Casework is 85% complete. And that has to do with the countertops that you all were updated on before, and there was a lot of discussion on that. Metal roofing has been completed, retaining walls complete, downspout drains complete, and exterior doors on order with no scheduled delivery date. They're 10 to 12 weeks out right now. This, however, will not affect occupancy. Additional site work that we completed within the last 3 weeks that we've been working on internally, minus the GC. The IT racks and leads are completed. We did power washing. The parking lot and pathway's been edged. The trash and recycling enclosure that was damaged has been replaced. The anchor that was in the parking lot, we had that sanded, repainted, developed a landscaping plan and received proposals, and completed a scope of work for the boardroom IT needs. So the work identified that's to be completed within the next 30 days by the general contractor. The interior doors will be installed and complete with the hardware, door hardware installed, interior signage installed, plumbing fixtures, toilet partitions installed. Casework will be completed at that point. The tile backsplash completed, remaining decking cleaned, and gutter and downspouts installed. We'll also go through the ACD walkthrough and punch list. And aside from, again, the general contractor internally, what we will be working on within the next 30 days, the parking lot resealing, that will be completed, the landscaping, the town hall sign, furniture delivery, and the IT boardroom setup. Estimated movement time at this point, given all of the factors, is January.
That's perfect. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I just wonder if, when you mentioned the IT in the boardroom, is it going to be capable of broadcasting our meetings without a spatial setup? It will be just ready to go kind of thing?
Yes,
Okay.
I did
It's
get
an
it.
upgrade from what we got now.
yes, correct.
We did get several of those questions on election day from folks that were coming up, just asking if there was a way that we could make it easier to hear the meeting. Sometimes, like in the firehouse when it rains, kind of thing with the metal roof, it was difficult. So
Yeah, and the intent is right now, because we have the American Rescue Funds available to us, we're just confirming that we can use that money to make those upgrades at this time. And we're pretty sure we can do that. We're just confirming that internally. And like I said, we're getting the proposals now, and I'll be able to bring that to the board.
perfect. Thank you. And we already did the open forum. I went out of order. Okay, so the next one was Mr. Fran Way. Now it's Fran's turn for the coastal engineer update.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. It was great seeing everyone at the NC, most of the board was at the NC Beaches, Inlets and Waterways Conference last week. It was good seeing everyone and talking to everyone. Deb, can you bring up my slides? I've a few slides just to go over everything. You can go to the second slide, please, Deb. So this is just an overview of the entire shoreline, North Topsail Beach, from phase 1 to the north to phase 5 to the south. We're, basically, sand, we're always looking at the entire beach from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, 4, 5. Coming up this just next week, we will be completing the truck haul, and that will be north of the pier between St. Regis and north of the pier. Yes, thank you, Deb. This project, there's about 1.8 miles left. We have TI Coastal and then Chris Gibson. I think he's in the crowd, right in the audience right now. He'll be speaking later. His crew will be. He's working with the ATM team, and he's going to be doing the staking and the surveying. And we're going to. We have a pre-construction meeting this Friday with the Department of Coastal Management and the sea turtle folks and everybody. But the project is planning to just right on schedule going forward for this November 16. For this area, this is a dune project where it's basically we're doing the dune project. If you do, and the town manager Alice, she mentioned that some people have mentioned about sand fencing, and if you're in this area, kind of where those yellow lines are, it's probably a good idea to remove your sand fencing for the truck haul project, and then replace it afterwards. The haulers are good at getting around the existing dune overwalks, all the timber overwalks. But obviously, please, but every now and then they might hit a dune overwalk. So kind of keep an eye out. Maybe it's actually a good idea, and the contractor will do this as well. Is kind of take a pre-inventory of the dune overwalks. But obviously, if you're an individual homeowner, you might have maybe a little bit more focus on your own dune overwalk. If anything happens, the contractor does have to come back and help fix that. But that's kind of where we are with that. We're hoping this project can be finished in about 30 days, basically, and that will kind of get us up to the FEMA Category B truck haul limit. And we'll see that, but we've got other projects, as you saw. We've got projects, in the permitting stages up in the phase 1 near the Topsail Reef Villas. And we have, obviously the phase 5 project that is coming later this environmental window. Next slide, please, Deb. Here's the phase 1 beach nourishment, and it's not the dune, it's a nourishment. We're not allowed to put a dune in this area because it's the inlet hazard area and there are those sandbags. But this is kind of what we're doing there. And then you can go to mention the COBRA zones, the Coastal Barrier Resources Act. And that really is that definitely limits our flexibility where we can put this material. And we are putting this in kind of the non-COBRA area. Next slide, please, Deb.
Fran, can I ask a question on that last slide for
Yes.
phase 1 nourishment?
Yeah.
Is there enough time during the day where the tide is low enough that the trucks are going to be able to get all the way down past Topsail Reef?
It will be difficult, but even they will have to build out kind of like a little peninsula
Okay,
and work out there. And then even almost daily maybe, where, you know, overnight they might lose it. And then, so it will be challenging.
okay, thank you.
Here's the phase 5 beach nursery. We split this up as the town manager Alice has mentioned, and you know, working with DEC Doug Carter and you know the alderman and the mayor and everybody, we're trying to make this happen. And you know, obviously the financing is a huge element. In addition to just the permitting and the FEMA project, we've got FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers. The state LGC, the local government. We've got lots of balls in the air on this one, but everything is moving forward kind of as planned. Considering all those people pulling us in all different directions with these timelines. But this project is slated to occur, and as Mayor Pro Tem Benson mentioned, it's a tight timeline, but we're gonna stick to it. And I was attended the same telephone meeting with Alice and Caitlin earlier this week with Doug Carter. It's a tough timeline, and the LGC is pretty strict about what they expect and everything. We're trying to get there. We're trying to get these permits in hand by early December. The bids are out for this project. I will be up at there's a pre-bid meeting tomorrow at the site in phase 5. I will be there, and I'm sure, several, many contractors will be there as well. I'll meet, Alice will be there, and Scott will probably be there as well. Following that pre-bid meeting, I'm interested to see the damage that the nor'easter has caused up and down the entire beach. And so I'm going to kind of visit the beach after that. So the bidding is on schedule right now. We're in the middle of the bidding process for about 300,000 cubic yards of material, and that will be truck hauled. And same truck haul place. There's 2 different mines. We need competitive bidding. And the material is very good, very nice color, very nice consistency, similar to what we've been using on the beach for the last couple of years. It's very nice sand. The local truck hauls do actually keep more of this money in the local economy versus, sending the money to a dredger that's, has their offices, out of somewhere in the Northeast or the Gulf Coast. The core permitting is slow, but we still hold out hope that the core permitting won't hold us up. There were some new issues on the news, and just about some sort of California case where a lot of the permitting, the core permitting, it was the Wilmington district kind of said we got to slow down permitting because of this case on the other side of on the West Coast. Hopefully that doesn't slow anything down, but it is what it is. And we will continue. We will keep pushing, and I will keep, staying on top of the core regulatory agencies as much as I can. Next slide, please, Deb. This is the county beach access. This is that project that was separated out from the FEMA Cat B. And that was basically due to what the county the county filed separately without the town's knowledge. And I saw, Mayor Pro Tem Benson's, I saw his photos of this area and how this did flood last weekend. And it needs to be repaired. And I'll await Mayor Pro Tem Mayor Benson, Pro Tem Benson. I'm sure he'll have an update here for his report later. And then I also worked with Alderman Grant. Alderman Grant, I guess we were just discussing about allocation between we're really trying to get sand on the entire beach, from phase 1 through phase 5. We're focusing on all the phases. And I think Alderman Grant is going to, in his report, he will kind of get into a little bit more on the kind of equity between where resources are being spent, town resources. You know, a lot of these projects, there's town funding, obviously, there's FEMA funding, and then there's state funding, and can even be county funding. There's also, you know, grants and things like that, you know, hazard mitigation grants and things like that. And there seem to be more and more grants available for resiliency related things. And we'll keep an eye out, and we'll kind of keep working to try to find those resources and open them up and get them to the town. Next slide, please, Deb. I just wanted to this is just from the annual monitoring from the last year. Overall, last year was a good year where the sand, the beach, North Topsail Beach naturally gained sand. There was place sand, and we could account for that. But beyond the place sand, there was natural sand. There was gain almost up and down the beach. It was one of those good years where we're getting hit by, you know, hurricanes and nor'easters almost every year, basically every year. But, you know, some years we have a good year, and I just like to call that out because, you know, it isn't all just doom and gloom. I think the town is doing well at keeping up with this, you know, sea level rise and, you know, more energetic hurricanes. I think the town is on the right path, and the beach you know, the beach health is good. And then one more slide. And this is just, basically, you know, down there in phase 4 and phase 5, we did not put any sand there this year, place it. But there's, you know, almost 350,000 cubic yards material that's from spreading from other activities and just from like a milder season. So it just shows, you know, it shows, you know, that the beach is in good shape. And I do think we can keep up with the kind of the erosion along the entire shoreline. And I think that, and then I'll just have the summary slide. And I think that Alice, she went through a lot of these. The truck haul will begin next week. The phase 5, we're in the permit application processing. The bid package has been released for the phase 5 project, pre-bid meeting tomorrow. The phase 1 is still in permitting. The New River Inlet Management Plan EIS, that is continuing. And there's a meeting on December 7th related to that. And I'm sure, you know, we can talk about that a little more. I'm still working with Doug Carter and DEC and Caitlin and Alice regarding kind of the funding and trying to make sure that the LGC funding process matches up with the permitting and the bidding process to make sure that it's all coming together. We did just complete the sediment and gravel sampling, and that was a state required grant, and that is additional sediment criteria rules related to shells greater than 3 inches and rocks greater than 1 inch in diameter. So we had our samplers out there were I think about 2 weeks ago or last week, and we'll have that in, and that was all grant funded by the state. So there was nothing that Alice did mention the CO planting and the county beach access we've gone over. And then just really like to talk about that overall gain in beach volumes for the last year where, you know, there's some bad years, but there's some good years. And this is one of the good years in terms of beach volumes. And that's my report.
Thank you, Fran. Do any board members have questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Fran, I would wonder, it's great that we gained sand, but in like 36 hours over the weekend, we lost a lot of sand. So I wonder if it'd be prudent to do a new beach survey for phases 1 through 4, just to know where we are now in case there's an opportunity later to maybe if the state comes through with some sort of storm damage relief funds.
That's a possibility. When I get up there and get some eyes on the beach tomorrow, it sounds like you think that would be a good idea, and we can definitely consider that. I don't think FEMA will get involved in this one. It won't be, so it would be, I think there's some things we have to think about, but yeah. And then hopefully that some of that material will recover, hopefully, where some of that material just moved, into deeper water. And as soon as we have a little bit more mild weather, that beach will recover. So we might want to wait maybe a little bit. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We can talk,
Okay.
we can discuss this possibly tomorrow when I'm up there.
Okay, thank you.
And Fran, I just had one question. I know we've talked a lot about the impact to the oceanfront as it relates to this last nor'easter, but living on the sound side, there was definitely a lot of coastal flooding and water being pushed in that way as well. So I don't know if anybody's looked, or if that's just not something we have to typically look at, but I don't know if there's any damage on this, on the ICW side.
Okay, then that's, yeah, because down in Charleston, the water level that we had was pretty much a 10-year year water level, which is kind of pretty unusual for just a here November storm. I did not compare the water levels that you guys experienced, but it might have been like a 10, especially for that sound side flooding. I do think there are some grants we can look into to try to, really kind of reinforce that side. I think we can look at that, definitely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else for Fran? All right. Thank you, Fran, very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, and I'll stick around and just for, and in case anyone has any questions later.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And I just wanted to say also, when I read through the minutes, I thought Jen, you did a great job.
I had the same comment. It's one of the best set of minutes we've
That's
seen
great.
in a long time.
Truly.
Great job, Danielle.
Okay, next item is continuing business, and that will be where Alderman Grant is going to give us an update on our capital project.
Well, there's not much of an update because when I talked to Alice on Monday, we're still trying to figure out if we have to do an RFQ for
Okay.
the firehouse. We need to get that one moving. I know Mike and I have been
Mhm.
talking about it a lot. And so we might want to kick it to Brian because we had at the last Alderman meeting a concern about whether we could sign the contract with the architects that's been negotiated, or we had to do a different process. Is that fair, Alice?
Yes.
Since that has a attorney opinion or legal advice component to it, I prefer to discuss that in closed session. And after the closed session, I don't think we have it as an action item here either way. We may not need an action tonight.
Right. Okay. I mean, the whole point is, I think that's a critical project for us. I think that the board is behind it. I think it's just making sure we've got the process in place that we move forward on it. And I think I consider some of this FEMA stuff, the capital projects, and I think he hit that pretty well. And then, as Fran mentioned, when I do my Alderman report, I'll go over he called it the equity sharing of how projects are handled. But I've got that in my report. I'll do it at the end.
Okay, and I would just like to stress that we've come a long way in just getting to even be at the point where we are with considering a firehouse. So
Absolutely.
I just don't want it to get backburnered because we've got, I mean, I know there's a lot of projects, right? So,
If you recall, Mayor, we were ready to approve this, but we
Yeah,
wanted to make
I
sure.
understand. No, I agree. It needs to be done the right way.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, for the public's benefit, the RFQ was issued and responded to. They were ranked and that entity was selected. So that was the issue last time.
okay. The next item on the agenda would be welcoming Mr. Chris Gibson to give us some discussion on the advantages of a shoreline committee. You can sit or you can
sit,
stand.
break
You
it.
can sit. You
Okay,
can sit.
great.
We can see him. Fran might want to heckle you.
It's my good side.
Are you sure he has one?
No, it was his back of his head.
Thank y'all for having me tonight. Did you got the presentation? So Mayor Pro Tem, Mike and I have been talking over the last few months regarding how y'all having a beach committee or possibly a beach manager. Y'all were looking at some different ideas. Wanted me to come in and talk about some of the other places I've worked and the pros and cons of those situations. And I think it's something that y'all really do need to consider. If y'all saw in the news recently, I'm just gonna throw this out there real quick. When you're looking at a beach manager, it's not an inexpensive position. If y'all saw the news where Rudy Rudolph left Carteret County, they put his financial package in that article. So it is understanding Rudy stayed in the same place for 20 years. So typically when they've done that, you've got somebody cheap. It's not like you're hiring somebody in that has the same level of experience. So it is a very expensive position to have. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I kind of want to talk about a little bit going into this. Y'all know all of this stuff, but I still think it's good to bring back up and think about. And, you know, one of the things to understand is that you guys are kind of on your own in a lot of ways. In the state of North Carolina, there's only 15% of the coastline that is managed under federal projects. The rest of it is all done by local towns. Now, whether they do that within just their board of aldermen or they have a separate committee working on it, they are working on it themselves. The only one project that we have now that's not constructed is still Surf City, which y'all were part of, but have decided not to go forward with. I think that was a very smart idea, the way that was structured and the way funding comes through the federal government. You're more likely to get funds on your own from the feds than you are working with the feds. It's a weird thing, but that's the way the cookie crumbles on that one. Next slide, please. One of the, sorry, it's okay. And this is the thing Fran was talking a little bit about the hurricanes. In the past decade, we have had close calls by 10 storms. Realistically, I've been here my whole life. I have a theory on the storms, which is kind of interesting, but the second half of the odd decades are usually the worst for us. If you go back and look at the 90s, 96 through 99, really bad period. If you look at 2016 through 2020, bad period for us. Go back into the 70s. The late 70s were a bad period. Late 50s was Hazel. It kind of rotates on that 20-year period. You get this hard couple of years, and then you get a little bit of slack. Luckily for y'all, if things go well, they have this year, we're running into a little bit of a slack period. We'll get some time for you guys to get your financial feet under you. But the fact is, they're coming. It's not that they're any more prominent, the number of storms. I was just looking at this the other day. It has been like 2.7 storms per year has been the average since 1950. It has not increased over the last 70 years. There's not some major maelstrom that's coming. We're just right now, we're focused on recent history because that's what we always do. And we've been in that part of the cycle for North Carolina in those 20-year cycles where it has been very, I'll say problematic. It just is what it is. It's part of living at the coast. Next slide, please. And I bring this up because you've always, this is what one place is, as we talk about the committee. I'm going to get off subject here for a second. But when you look at the committee, it gives you a way to prepare ahead of time. When you guys are looking at stuff as a board, everything you do, whether you like it or not, is political. It really is. So you kind of, you know, if you make a decision on something that seems like it's too far in advance or too late, you guys get nailed for it. Those kind of talks that are happening, preparatory talks, need to be happening outside this meeting. And that's what the committee or a manager does for you, is allows you to talk outside of this particular forum. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm a little hard reading my own notes. You look at the different types of management that you do, and you guys have done pretty much all of them here in one form or another, whether it's been truck haul, whether it's been operations and maintenance disposal by the Corps up in phase 1, whether it's the phase 5 or original phase 1 projects. Y'all have touched on just about every kind of thing, whether it's digging in the inlet, digging offshore, hauling it across the bridge. Y'all have touched on all of them. And that's one of the things that you really need folks to come together on and look at what all these tools are in your toolbox and how to use them effectively and efficiently, and know what's effective and efficient, not 3 months in advance, but 3 years in advance. Because by the time, if you get hit by a storm, by the time you go through the permitting, you've gone through a whole nother year sitting there going, God, I hope another one doesn't come through, because if it does, oh boy. And so with taking a larger or more proactive planning mindset, you can get ahead of that. Even if you're not ready for it financially, you at least can get your permits in place. I mean, that's a bigger time, that's your time expense. So get that time expense out of the way. Have those things planned, look out into the future, 10, 15, 20 years even, and have that kind of thought process and be prepared for that. So that when the time comes, you go, yep, okay, we got to deal with our finances, but we're ready to roll. We've got a permit in place. We're going to go do something. Once upon a time, when Hurricane Irene hit down at Topsail Beach, because of all the planning we had done, we were actually putting sand on the beach 63 days after the storm. And did not have, we had just done the project last fall. There wasn't one planned for 5 years. But we had everything and we're already working that way. We already had kind of our permits for what we could do in place. And so we were able to go right through the FEMA process. A little simpler then, and it went boom, 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 and we were on and moving. And so that's what the committee will help you do. Again, down at the bottom here, it talks about the private nourishment communities. And you look in this right left-hand corner, how many different towns are doing this? One of the places where the beach manager side comes in is if you've got a county that has a lot of towns. When you start looking at Bogue Banks, it has what, 8, 9 different towns on the island. You go down into New Hanover County that has several federal projects and a private project. With all of it, it gets to be like herding cats, but they're all your cats. So that person is good for doing that and helping keep that straight. Because, for instance, you look up in Dare County and you've got 3 projects going this year, and they're being done by 3 different engineers. And that's kind of crazy. One group of them, there's 5 towns that are in a group together. That's the northern from Kill Devil Hills up. Those guys are all working together. That's one project. Nags Head's doing it with another engineer, and Buxton and Avon are doing it with another engineer, but it's all coordinated through the county manager up there is the one that takes care of it. But that's a big part of his role, is to herd that and make sure the financing goes out. And that's what Rudy did for Carteret. So we'd like those for New Hanover County. I don't know of anywhere here, nor in any of the other places that I've worked, where an individual town has had a beach engineer. It just was not a value added person, because you were still having to go out because of equipment and other technical things. You were having to go outside. For someone to do engineering, to do like a sand transport study, for you to have an engineer that can do a sand transport study, you've got your engineer, but then you may have to invest $35,000, $40,000 in software for him to actually do the calculations. So there's all these other add-on things that come. And in our business, software, oh my gosh, we probably, in our little tiny business, probably have $250,000 in software, not hardware, just to operate our small business. So coastal engineering is an expensive thing when it gets into the software, the hardware, and everything else it takes to do what we do. Next slide, please. Again, I kind of mentioned this, so this is just mentioning with whether it's a committee or a manager, primarily looking at the committee thing. It's looking at longevity. It's looking beyond the next election. It's folks that don't have to worry about that can look and can talk openly. Next slide, please. And the other part of this too, you guys y'all all have jobs, y'all have this that you're doing, you've got to manage the finance and the fire department, the police, all of that. When we talk about herding cats, this group, the regulatory side of that, having somebody that understands what you're going to have to go through, having a group that can look at this and say, oh, well, you know, we really want to do this on the beach, but it's going to impact, we don't have dune mouse. It's one of the things we dealt with in Florida, but all of a sudden this is going to impact the dune mice. Having somebody it's not your outside consultant that will forget about it, that will have that institutional knowledge to carry on from board to board. That's what that committee is there to do. Hey, we had this problem with this environmental issue before, or we had this success before. We carry that on as institutional knowledge outside of elections. That's what the committee is there to do, and help y'all be able to continue long-term planning without going, again, like I said, from election to election or consultant to consultant. Next slide, please. The Beach and Inlet Sound Committee, and I'm actually gonna move over here so I can see my points. I'm sorry. You know, it's typically a focus group, 5 to 7 people, usually has a board member on it, but it's not necessarily, it should not be all board members. You have somebody just kind of keep an eye on it. Certainly you don't want more than 2 because then it becomes a quorum, right? So that's very important. It's an open forum to kind of share concepts. Crazy idea we had down at Topsail. We went round and round and round. And if it had been in this form and any of y'all would have taken a position on it, it would have cost you one way or another politically. That was when we built the dune down there. Does the town pay to extend people's crossovers? I can't tell you how many hours we talked about that idea, which is not really something that you want to be talking about in your meetings, because everybody's got a different idea. Well, should it be 6 feet wide? Should it be 3 feet wide? Should it be 5 feet? We would get bogged down for 2 hours on that. You guys are doing this at night after work. You don't want to talk about that for forever. And then of course, when you have the whole public here, then you've got everybody else's ideas that go into it. So it gives you a little bit, something typically done in the middle of the day. It's something where you can have a focus group and get some ideas together. Typically the committee will work with the engineer. That's what I do at Topsail Beach. We had a smaller group. When we did Mason's Inlet years ago, we had the Mason's Inlet Preservation Group and had a group of stakeholders. So it was kind of like the beach committee. They advised New Hanover County on how they wanted to go through the project because they were the ones that were actually spending the money. So it's a good way to do that. You guys, with your phases that you have, it may be something that where you have, say, 7 members, you have 1 from each phase, a board member and an ad hoc member. That way, all of the stakeholder interests are represented, and you can talk together that way, get together. And again, all of those people are going to have to share continuity as you go through forward, carry institutional knowledge, which is about what y'all are doing. And again, it allows some crazy ideas to come out and get thrown around, some good, some bad, some probably shouldn't be brought up, but it allows you to bring those up without people taking a stance on it. Next slide. And that's what this is a summary of that. This is where out of the box thinking really is allowed to be talked about. When you've got, how does this grant impact this grant when you're doing it financially? Can we take this one and basically shore up this other one? How do we use them to combine? How do we use FEMA money for shallow draft to generate shallow draft funds? All sorts of different things can get talked about in those types of scenarios. Again, like I said, crazy ideas about how you might want to work with, I don't know, say New River Inlet, what you might want to choose to do there, using that as a source. Something that's, you can work on as a committee, then come and the committee on a monthly basis at the meeting, just like we had Fran do the beach report, the committee updates the board here, and y'all get to go back and stew on whatever the committee's kind of talked about over the last month. Next slide, please. Again, this is what doing this committee thing really does, is it helps you to stay organized, be proactive. Again, I can't speak enough for institutional knowledge, and allows you to plan for before it's happening. You're not looking at this as a triage situation, which the board usually, in a lot of things, you have to act in a triage manner. It's just the way it is. This is another group to act ahead of the triage. And I think that's very important to be successful. Next slide, please. Here we go. Any questions? I'm glad to talk.
I do.
Sure.
So if we were to implement some type of beach committee, in your opinion, what do we do with that plan that was written years ago for phases 1 through 5? Do
Well-
we revisit that? Do we just kind of keep it as you would call it, knowledge from what we've learned then? Or do we come into this with a fresh idea? Because I look at what Topsail Beach has done, and that I'm just very impressed with the fact that they basically have a huge recycling program going on with their sand.
I think because of the size of your town,
Yeah.
you've got so much length. You've got 11 and a half miles of shoreline. And you have different issues with those 11 or benefits. You've got inside the cover zone, outside the cover zone, hard bottom off of this area. That's how the phases kind of came to be.
Okay.
What was in the inlet influence area? Phase 1, right? Well, 2 and 3, those two areas, that's where the hard bottom is right offshore, right? 4's kind of open game, but still in the cover zone. 5's open game inside the cover. Or
Outside
the cover zone. Available for federal funding. I don't think you should necessarily go away from those. Use those in order to start thinking about things like, when you go back and you look way back, because I've been coming up here now for 20 years, literally talking, listening, a lot of listening. When you start talking about, we're going to focus on this area right now, maybe with the committee, this is where you start looking at things like special service districts or something between the zones, because some of them have better advantages than others. More rows of houses, some of them are leaner, some of them are fatter. How do we deal with all of that? Different issues from the erosion, like down by the park. I mean, that's a whole, that comes through there. It doesn't matter. It's somebody whistles and the waves come through there, it seems like. So you've got these different areas of concern. They're pretty well grouped. Now, the plan as it was laid out, you obviously have diverted from that a long time ago. Because financially, the plan didn't make sense, and it didn't make sense then because it looked at things. Yes, sir.
Not to interrupt you, but my understanding, and I wasn't on the board then, but I was coming to meetings and stuff, was that one of the reasons why it was broken into 5 phases was due to the inability of the town to be able to afford to do the whole thing at one time.
That's
It
correct.
was broken down into 5 phases. The phases were, as we all know, 1 through 5, north to south. There was no intent for them to be necessarily done in numerical order.
No, I knew that was
Just the background.
that was the case. They were, you're absolutely right. They were not. They were looked at going, and there was always a look to go up at the north end, because that was the very most crucial as far as seriously impacted at the time. Then look further south. There was some availability of loans, et cetera, that were there, because it was outside the cover zone. I think the thought process about how for instance, phase 5 originally, the reimbursement probably that went along with the federal project. There was some thoughts about reimbursement that were not by the engineer, that were not quite exactly right. I think you got caught up in a debt service situation. All of those things have kind of snowballed a little bit. So I think the areas of looking at that, you take that where you've been, and then you see where you can go.
Okay.
The big thing is going to be, and this is where you've got another group of people besides you guys just doing this, is delving into that. How do we financially, how do we put this into play where we can do this and we do a project and we're not, is there a way to do this so that we're not overlapping and paying for 2 and 3 and 4 projects each year? Because if you get in that situation where you're doing a phase a year, right? But you're borrowing money on a 5-year scale for each of them, you're paying for all 5 every year.
Right.
Because you never actually get out of debt service for any one before you're doing it
That's a
again.
great car project.
Yeah, so it's, that's a place where I think your committee, especially if you can get some folks that are, money managers, that kind of thing, get at least 1 or 2 that are in the town that are interested in that, to get in there and start talking about those ideas that are a little out of the box of how we do that and how we put it together and how you get ahead of the game with the LGC. but it just gives you a set of minds to do that.
Yeah, and I definitely have heard from the citizens and residents I've spoken to, I can't imagine that we have an issue with people wanting to volunteer to be on that type of a.
I think you've got a great community here as far as that goes, as far as volunteering.
Mhm.
And I think when you're in a beach town like this, you have a lot of people that are still at the working age. You also have a lot of retirees who have a lot of knowledge from their past employment. Folks don't move to the beach if they were the guy hauling stuff around the office.
Right.
The guy in the mailroom that doesn't buy beach home. It's the top guys that really understand the business of things. And you've got to look at this as a business and as an asset.
For sure. I'm gonna go around the board, I think, and see if we've got questions. I think that'd be most effective. I'm gonna start that, you're last.
Okay,
I was gonna start with Alderman Leonard.
okay. Well, I like the idea in theory, and I like the idea, and it's probably worth trying, but you know, it to me, and I wrote a note and passed it to Connie, and said, shades of the best committee. You know, I was on the best committee as a citizen volunteer back in 2008 or 9 or whenever it was. And, you know, I just, our challenges in this town, and you touched on several of them, are so much greater than either the other two top sliding towns. And we've got Cobra, we've got the inlet, we've got what we thought was going to be taken care of us by the federal government, phase 5,
Right.
which then, you know, once we started reading the fine print, clearly was not a good move for the town. And so we had to disengage from that. There are a lot of moving pieces to North Topsail Beach, significantly greater than either Topsail Beach or Surf City. And I think that a lot of those have to do with the amount of shoreline that we have. I think exceeds either one of those towns. We're at 11.2 miles. And, you know, I'm thinking we need some professional help. And I've said that all along, and I've said that from way back in the days of the BEST committee, that, you know, the citizen volunteers, including myself, and I consider a lot of the people up here to be citizen volunteers, given how much money we don't make and the amount of time we put into this endeavor. You know, citizen volunteers have the town's best interests at heart, and they're dedicated, but we're not engineers, and we're not the kind of people that can come up with the realistic, tried and true solutions to the problems that we're experiencing.
I would agree with you 110%. And I guess I kind of went about this the wrong way in the way I talked about the committee. The committee is an interface between the board and your consulting engineer. It is there so that the ideas between the engineer and the committee can get worked out to bring a succinct proposal to the board that you can look at and chew on, and not just you're not trying to catch the buckshot.
Yes, because we've tried the amateur approach to this thing for going on 2 decades now.
Yeah.
And it ain't worked.
And there are good groups and bad groups. Now, understand Topsail, I don't know if you know this bit of history, but Topsail before they had the BIS committee, they had another beach committee. And it went on for about 7 or 8 years, and it got problematic. And they actually shut it down, like y'all did the BEST committee. And then after a while, they brought back the BIS because they felt like they needed to do the things that I'm talking about as their program got going. And that brought it back together, and it has simplified things. But if you've got a committee that can't get together and can't think together and thinks that they are the end all be all for what's going to happen, not the board, because the board is the end all be all, then you can run into some problems with the volunteers. So, you know, as a board, when you start selecting those members, you need to be very careful of how those folks are selected, who you have. And it is not for them to actually be doing the work. It is for them to be working with the consultant to get these succinct ideas. If for some reason you find that for whatever reason, you need to move from consultant to another consultant, you don't lose all of his knowledge. That's tied with the committee. If the board gets elected and elected out, these aren't elected people. They will at least transfer to the next, a majority of them to the next year so that you keep that. But you absolutely need professional help that understands that beach tree nourishment, finding sand and putting sand on the beach, man, that's easy. Finding the money and the political wherewithal and dealing with the taxes and all of that, that's a whole nother thing.
Cobra.
Cobra.
MSDs and all of that stuff.
All of that stuff.
And, you know, just a little bit more back history, the BEST committee, the town initially had a beach committee, a beach working group or whatever they call it. And they disbanded that. And then they created the BEST committee.
Mhm.
And then the BEST committee delivered their findings to the board.
Mhm.
And the board at the time wasn't particularly enamored with the conclusions reached by the BEST committee, to the extent that the BEST committee was not allowed to formally report their results out to that board of aldermen. And at that time, the board of aldermen then disbanded the BEST committee. Sent us all a letter signed by the mayor thanking us for our year's worth of hard work. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I understand, and I can understand where your thoughts come from.
you know, so, you know, that's the back history.
Yep.
And I was there because I lived it.
Yeah, I understand. And again, this is something that, for, as me personally, you know, I have no vested interest in whether you have a committee or not. To me, it's a way to get some of the grunt work off of you guys, and to be able to move forward and have another set of brains in the room that basically they're volunteers, they're unpaid help. So you can't lose anything other than time by doing.
Right.
Again, I'm not trying to be the guy throwing a flying ointment here.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
just trying to give you a little bit of, you know, because you and I, you know, each other for a long time.
Long
too. And, you know, just, this is what we're faced with walking into this
Yeah,
proposal.
and you need to walk into it, and everybody in this committee member needs to walk into it eyes wide open.
Mhm.
Exactly.
If you come into it with, oh, hey, this is gonna be hunky dory, yeah, I'm gonna work on the beach thing, and I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna help, I'm gonna go release some turtles and put some seagrass in the ground, and that's what I'm gonna do on the committee.
What she does.
Not a problem, great, it's a great thing to do, but that's not what the committee's there to do.
Right.
Right.
Understood. Let's move on to Connie.
Well, Tom took some of my stuff.
He always does that. Connie.
He does, right? So my comment and question was going to be that we have had different beach committees in the past, and while you said the board is political and yet the committees are not because they go beyond boards, they've ended up being political for us, where boards have disbanded ones that were put in by other boards. Have you come across that in other beach towns, and how did they deal with that, if you did?
Well, so, an interesting situation. When I started with Thompson, it was an absolute upheaval. I'll give you the story on that. They had actually gone through the whole process of permitting a project. They had a borrow site that was just offshore of Thompson Inlet. They were going to dredge there and put it on the beach. Bids came back and they were $7 million over budget, almost double.
Wow.
Town said, well, what, I mean, and this was no other funding coming in, what are we gonna do? One of the former mayors was a neighbor of mine, and we were doing a dredging project in my neighborhood, and to save money, I would go down every evening and get on the Bobcat and level out the dirt. And so that was my part of doing that. And Bill Stamper came over and starts talking about the beach project Topsail, and says, what do you think about this? I said, I think there's better ways to do it. And so, you know, I know some stuff about disposal islands. We've been working in these. We can patchwork something together and get where they want to go for a lot less money. And so he made a few phone calls and they invited me over for a meeting. I was supposed to meet 3 new board members that had just been elected and sit at a round table. Not a public meeting, just 3 people talk. I walked in, the other engineer had 8x10 colored glosses with the photos and the writing on the back, had them all over the room. There were 80 people in the room, including every single regulatory agency in the state and federal. And they went through and did a presentation about how their project was great. And after it all got done, Julian Bone looked at me and he said, well, Chris, what do you think? And I said, well, if I knew what they did, I probably would have done the same thing, but I don't. And I said, we've worked in this island and this island, and while it doesn't look like good sand on the surface, it is good sand. We can take sand out of the navigation channel and generate another 300,000 yards. We can do this. By the time we piecework it together, we've got $1 million project. Well, they got rid of the beach committee they had the next day. They got rid of the town manager they had the next day. And they started over from scratch. And a week later, the interim town manager, Ricky Smith, who cut the lawns in the neighborhood that I was the HOA president of, calls me up and says, hey, Mr. Chris, can you come over here to Topsail Beach and tell us what to do with this inlet? And I said, sure, Ricky, I'll come over and see what we can do. And so it was a complete, total upheaval. They let the consultant go, they let the town manager go, they let the beach committee go, and they came at it at a totally different angle. I mean, it was a 90-degree turn. So yes, I've been involved in it. I've also been involved with Mason's Inlet. And when I worked down there for 13 years, I worked on that project. And dealing with the folks on Wrightsville Beach and dealing with the folks on Figure 8 Island, I served 2 masters and sat between them and tried to keep them from killing each other for 13 years. And somehow we managed to do that. And it's managed to be a project that I can proudly say 20 years later, when it was being done, when it was being permitted, it was in the paper every other week. There was an article about this, oh, they were going to kill this, they were going to do that, this was going to happen. And, about 12, 14 years ago, I was in a meeting, I said, hey, did you see that article about Mason's Inlet the other day in the paper? And they said, no, I didn't. I said, you're exactly right. You didn't. Everything's going smooth. Nobody talks about it. And 20 years later, it's the same way. It's nicely, quietly moving on. But it took working with 2 masters and getting them to work together. It's what you're going to have to do here. How do you get all of the different people from all of the different phases working together? Well, let's get somebody from each one of the phases, put them in a room together and throw all of the complaints and the ideas up in the air, and then let the consultant and the people figure them out.
I agree with that, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. You good,
So-
Connie?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, you recall that I was the one that sort of initiated the idea of forming a new beach inlet and sound advisory committee. And so Chris and I have had quite a bit of discussion on this, and he's presented, I think, a pretty accurate description of what direction I think we need to go. So no, I don't have any questions.
Alderman Meyer?
I was going to bring up the same as Connie, because even if we get a working group and everything's going well, and we get a new board and a new attitude, then they could stop it. Like, then, that's my concern.
And I fully understand that. As a personal thing that relates, when Mason's Inlet was originally done, I actually was moving, when they got to permitting and were going to construction, I had made a decision to change companies I was with. And the county came to me and put together a position that was going to be for the county, a county coastal engineering position. And we started talking about it, and I heard a couple of words that I didn't like, and that was at the pleasure of the board. And I knew that my position would be at the pleasure of the board. The project was politically contentious. I might be flipping hamburgers in 3 months. So I decided not to go that route and stay on the consulting side. There's always a chance of it going political. If it stays here, it's not a chance, it is.
Yes.
So,
So
this is-
either way, it's.
yeah, it's, what's the worst that can happen? You decide to not do it anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so.
Okay.
Of course, I'll have comments. Full disclosure, I talked to you because I've been adamant for a year that we should hire a beach engineer, right up in the point that you told me it was $200,000 a year to hire that person. Plus we have to buy the software and everything else. So you sold me during our conversation. I think Tom and everybody brought up some good points. I don't see this thing working without having a consulting engineer basically being the herder of the cats in this thing. I don't see it working without having that kind of continuity. I talked to you a little bit about that. doing. I think what we do with Doug Carter in terms of the financial
The
stuff
same.
and bringing on somebody like that. I would not recommend to the board that we get into something where every time Joanne picks up the phone to talk to somebody, we get an hourly bill. I'd rather have somebody as part of the, be part of the team,
Yeah.
you know, like Doug does and stuff like that from a budgeting standpoint and everything else. But as they know, I've been pushing for this because I think there's money out there. I think there's grants out there that we're not chasing. And we're a small town. We don't have big budgets.
Yep.
And I think that after talking to you and talking to Mike at length, he's the one that said, I need to talk to you before I kept pushing the engineer. But like I said, if the base is 200 plus everything else, plus software and stuff, that's not something we can do as a
Yeah,
town.
you need more of, from a engineer. This, even as crazy as this is not a full-time job for an engineer.
Mhm.
This is, understand, I work on approximately 12 to 15 projects like this annually.
Mhm.
So this is a small portion of what I would be doing, or if I were working with you, or someone, Fran, or someone else. So you are at that point, and you've got benefits and everything else on top of that. So at that point, you are better having a consulting engineer. Yes, you need that to go along with this committee. Full disclosure on that, absolutely, I agree. I think that with our local knowledge, et cetera, I think we would be, our firm would be good to working with you on that part of the project. You know, one of the things that we do have that is helpful, and you're gonna have to deal with, unlike a county where they're hiring somebody and they're looking to the communities, you're actually looking upstream, right? And where the county's looking and working downstream. Well, what are your upstream partners? And I will say, I don't think this town, not knocking everything because it's hard, but this town hasn't done as well as it could have working
100%
upstream.
agree.
You know, you've got, you're talking about a beach and sound thing. Honestly, you have some political issues with Onslow County. Onslow County is a good old boy county. I mean, it is. It's military and it's good old boy. How do you get the folks that are the good old boys? How do you get the Millises and the Mitchells and the Laniers and all of those folks that own all those shrimp boats that are docked a mile and a half up? How do you get them working with you to do something that is beneficial to both? How do you get two birds with one stone? This is where committee people, where you find somebody that's within the committee that has that local relationship. You know, hey, I buy 300 pounds of shrimp from this guy every year. You know, when they come in, that guy can go talk to this guy and he talks to the other guys, and all of a sudden you're working with another group of people that have similar interests as you.
Well, and I think the point is that we've talked here is I think the position that we're talking about, this thing will save us money. I think this will pay for itself. You know, you talked about how the project that you worked on with Topsail, I don't know what the right way to do these things are. I'm not an expert in the beach and stuff like that, but there's got to be money out there. I know that Joanne and I and the board have worked. I think that we're working towards a very positive relationship with Onslow County. Very respectful of that board. I think the county manager is an exceptional, you know, person that's working there. So I think those are out there. I think that they'll help us. But I think part of it is finding how much money is out there for projects and spending it the right way and not doing one-off projects, you know, but having some kind of plan. So I'm 100% behind it. And you convinced me we can't afford to have just a beach engineer.
Well, and there are ways to do it, and you're right. The amount of grants out there are staggering, and how you work one grant to get another grant. And I'm gonna be a little bit, pat myself on the back here. We did $34.4 million worth of work over the last 2 years at Topsail Beach. Out of the town's coffer was 223,000. Everything
Making
else
the
was
point.
grants.
Yeah.
There's been over.
It's because they got our sand.
You're gonna have to explain why
They
you
need
just
to brand it
crapped all
back.
over our town. Excuse my French.
That's fine.
But there's been they have gotten in the last decade over $50 million in grants.
Yeah.
And that has been why their program has worked, is because not only, and it's the political things that you can't necessarily work as a town. The Shallow Draft Inlet Fund started at a picnic table in the back of Julian's yard with my wife sitting at the table. We were 2 of the 5 people at the table and said, hey, you know, the intercoastal waterway and these inlets are like roads. Let's get a little bit of road tax. Throw that back in there. Voters pay into that. And I had kind of avoided some property tax on my boat by having it federally registered rather than state registered. All the big boats are have Coast Guard numbers rather than
Local number.
local numbers. So guess what? They don't get picked up for your ad valorem tax. So let's get these guys registered. I got to deal with it. It's going to hit me right in the pocketbook. But that also raises money locally, which then the locals can use to turn around and get grants from the state. So it actually becomes a self-supporting system if you're using sand that's coming from that thing.
So I'm sold. I think this is something we've been talking about for.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to say a couple things. A few things that you hit on, Chris, that I think are just so important to this town is, as you said, if we could get citizens engaged from each phase, that's one way to pull the town together, because it's not phase 1 versus phase 5 or phase 3 or anybody in between. We've got to figure out how to get sand on the whole entire beach, and we need to be working together and understand and look at it as a town as a whole. The other thing, and you saw by Fran's report that he went through, there's a ton of projects that are going on right now, but we seem to be just trying to, as you just said, get through those projects. We're not able to actually look ahead, try and find the money. We don't even know, as a board, we're not that experienced. We don't have your background to try and find the money or the grants, or what is the best way to go about doing some of these things. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you sold me too. So, I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, if you were, this was just an educational discussion tonight, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Good, thank
Chris.
you.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it. And again,
You're
as y'all
very
know,
convincing.
my phone number, you guys have my phone number. If you don't have any questions about this or anything else, I am a member of this community. I'm an end user here. So I'm a stakeholder. I'm happy to talk about it, and Lord knows I can run my mouth for a while. So
Appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming.
what's that?
So we like steak.
Really.
I'm still on my share of 300 pounds of shrimp he buys.
Honestly, my dad,
Honestly, we did
my
this
dad
past
didn't
week,
pick
so
them up. They had a good run last week. What was it, Friday? Friday when we put them up?
Thursday.
Thursday they
This was
came
trash
in.
day too, thank goodness.
Yeah, that's right. So the boats there at Melissa's, they got 1,700 pounds of 13 count. You buy them for $5 a pound.
Wow.
Wow.
So we buy them in a huge amount, and then take them and put them up in the freezer for the whole year. We buy them all at one time when they're the largest and least
Well, you got
expensive.
my phone number. You can text me next time.
Well,
I can buy
our
$5.
kids are like, they're like cats, and I think they just instinctually knew we were bagging the shrimp, and I'm getting phone calls, Mom, how many bags of those can I have?
Well, thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
next item on the agenda is the second open forum. I don't know if anybody signed up.
Mr. Cameron Kegel did sign up, but I do believe.
He just, yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to speak at the second forum?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, then we're going to move on to the attorney's report.
We have some things to discuss in closed session. There was a House bill that was passed on October 18th that tweaked some of the 160D new regulations. Nothing significant, but it's municipal friendly. Elaborates on when a municipality can have a more stringent regulation in the state. And it clarifies the governing body's ability to settle a matter if a matter is up on appeal, with a bit of certiorari, which the chance of us having to deal with that are very slim. And then discuss closed session.
Okay. All right, the mayor's report. The only thing I really wanted to report on tonight was I wanted to thank everybody who came out and voted on election day. It's certainly been my pleasure to work with the board that's sitting in front of you today. And I'm also looking forward to welcoming the new board members in. And again, we just need to continue working as a board, and we need to continue trying to engage the residents and citizens. And I think these committees that we're trying to get moving, like the recreational committee, as well as a shoreline committee, I think that'll go a long way in just trying to pull people together. Okay, so we are going to do the Alderman's report, and Alderman Grant, I'll start with you this time.
One of the things I did is I wrote this, and I'll be sending it to Danielle afterwards. The interaction we had with voters election caused me to put this in writing because it seems like there's a lot of misinformation and stuff out there about what's going on in the town. Complaints about things not being on the website. I've talked to people and some of the stuff was amazing to me, the misunderstanding of the things going on in the town. I do want to thank everybody that came out and appreciate actually the people that actually talked to me. And during that was kind of interesting. I mean, one of the funny ones I heard is I pay taxes in North Topsail Beach, so why can't I vote here? And the answer is you can only vote one place. And you'll see on here, I found a thing online, it's called From Rockingham County, that describes residency and domicile and stuff like that, not giving legal advice. But it was an interesting conversation with the lady very shortly because she went through this whole thing about she had just registered and everything else and she hadn't done it for years and she didn't understand. And at the end of the conversation, I think Susan was next to me. She said, well, the reason I never registered here is it's going to cost me money because if this becomes my domicile, then the other one is my investment property and now I'm going to get taxed differently. Okay, that's an economic decision. You get to vote one place. So it's on. Second one is when and it was amazing and Fran talked about it a little bit. Lady came up to me and said that she was very upset because the town doesn't do anything in phase 5. And I said, well, ma'am, that's not true. And she said, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I said, were you here in 2015 when they did that work around your house? And she said, oh my God, we wouldn't have a beach without it. There's a little bit of a disconnect there between saying that you had all the sand going. What's interesting though, is that Alice and I talked to Fran there, went back, and as people know here, I'm a numbers guy. Here's the thing that'll blow you away. Of the projects, including the ones we're doing right now, the majority of town funds, 70% of the money that has been spent in the town since 2012 was in phase 5. Believe it or not, only a little over 20% has been in phase 1. I've got a chart here that I'll hand out to everybody that Fran put together that she had asked us to look to. And it was amazing to me the disconnect from talking to somebody in phase 5 that thought that they had nothing done down there when they had 70% of the money in the town was 5. Don and I happen to live in 2. You don't even know when.
I'm in
what
2.
And she's in 2 also. You don't want to know what 2 was because we're in the rounding errors. So anyway, I've got a spreadsheet on that. The other thing was interesting too, and we talked about the FEMA projects and the things that are going on. There's a lot of sand that'll be going down there. Was a discussion about people saying, and again, this stuff was posted, that FEMA pays up front for everything. They don't. And it's something that Mr. Carter and I think that Brian alluded to is we're going to have to borrow upwards of $20 million to be able to do this reimbursable project. I thought that was interesting. I've also got a discussion here about the difference when the money was spent in phase 5, the $17 million was down there. It became an engineered beach, which is called a category G beach, which my friend Mike has educated me on in detail, which means you got a whole bunch more sand down there. And if you look at the slide that Fran had up there with the amount of sand going into 5 with the FEMA reimbursement, it's unbelievable. Why did the town not plan ahead for the Army Corps of Engineers project? It was such a great project. I guess Alice and I met with an individual who was one of the engineers that worked on the project in 2015. I also talked to the Army Corps people that were there, and they said nobody knew in 2010 that the project was going forward. They made it clear at that conference that we went to, the Army Corps of Engineers plans a number of projects. They have a lot of projects. They don't get funded for very many of them. They actually talked about, the head of operations talked about 6 refurbishment projects that they asked for this year. They got 1. So, and we confirmed with the engineer that we worked on the 2015 project. At that time, the town did not believe the Army Corps of Engineers project was real, that there's no way to do for it. Also ran the numbers because somebody had sent a note to Joanne about why didn't we just raise taxes a little bit? Again, back to the numbers. We only charge 40 cents here. All right. If you raised by 25% and 10 cents came in, we would raise less than $1 million. The down payment on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project is $19 million. Plus we'd have to borrow $26 million. Okay, there's no way that project goes forward. Number one, we wouldn't get, and Mr. Carter confirmed that there's no way that they would ever approve it.
The LGC.
The LGC. That was clear from the call that we participated in on Monday. Activities, went to the annual conference. We met with the Coast Guard people, state and local officials. And I wanted to thank the town staff. If Scott's still here, they have done a great job in cleaning up the beach. I'm going to have her submit this. So I don't have to read the whole thing.
Okay.
But again, I think that there's so much information out there, particularly, and as the mayor said before, people in 5 thinking one got everything, people in 1 getting everything. And the reality is 70% of the money spent in this town since 2012 will be spent in phase 5.
And I think the biggest thing that we need to take away from that is we need to do a better job planning for how to get sand everywhere.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the issue. And I think the other thing on that is understanding that the money that was spent down there, which I've heard people say was not a good idea, without that, we would not be putting that sand down there this year. They would be getting a fraction of that. And also I talked to Deb before, concept was, what would that beach look like if that 1,200,000 cubic yards was put down in phase 5? If that wasn't there, they wouldn't have had a beach for the last 5 years.
Okay.
That's my report. And
Alderman
I'm gonna
Meyer?
send it to Danielle.
Alderman Grant, I can tell you when the decision to go forward with the phase 5 USDA loan was made, that all indicators were that the federal project was not anywhere near on the horizon. I was in those meetings and Tom, you.
Yeah, I was in too.
So it's to the extent there's a notion that we should have known it was coming. I can tell you personally that there was nothing that suggested it was.
You just remind me of one quick comment. We met with the Army Corps people down there, Bob and the people down there. Very professional in describing how they understood completely why we were not going forward with the project, number 1, and they committed to work cooperatively. Currently says this does not affect our relationship in any way. We're happy to work with you guys. We will work with you guys in the future.
Okay. Alderman Meyer?
Well,
I just stole your thunder. She was in half this.
What he said.
What he
well,
said.
yes, I do think from the election, I learned that we need to communicate better with the town. Saying that it's on the website, and I think possibly moving forward, I won't have anything to do with it, but possibly we can do a better job of the website being more
Friendly.
user friendly. Yes, it's really hard to negotiate where you're going on the site, and things are on there that are old and that we need to remove, and then maybe putting things out periodically, because just because we put it out once doesn't mean that everybody read it. We need to reinforce possibly what we've said before. Not in a negative way, but in a positive way on our town is working hard for you. We're doing this and this and this for you. I think that would be important. That's kind of what I got from the election. And also I wanted to say how much I've enjoyed working with everyone, and what a great experience this has been.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Benson?
Thanks, Mayor. I would echo what you said to thank all the voters that came out for Election Day. I wanted to give a couple updates on the Topsail and Shoreline Protection Commission activities. As you know, possibly there is a community action team, and this is part of the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program. Topsail Island as a whole got a planning grant. We had a meeting yesterday, I guess it was. Manager Durian was there, Planning Director Hill was on board, and one of our citizen appointees, Marianne Harness, was on board for the meeting. And the basic take home from that meeting was that the group will be working on the vision and the goals for the resilience program, and we'll be moving into phase 2 beginning of next year. The outcome is that we will be in a position to apply for grants that will allow us to have more resilient infrastructure, roads, buildings, so forth. So that's going on. The other thing the Shoreline Protection Commission is championing right now is the request from the North Carolina Coastal Federation to start thinking more about microplastics. And microplastics are little bitty itty beads of plastic, like 5 millimeters or smaller, that break down from all this plastic that gets into the ocean waters and is showing up in all kinds of marine life. And so the goal is to educate people about reusable materials. We're going also, the commission, I think, is going to also promote a more and more advertisement. Don't take glass bottles to the beach, so forth. These one-time use materials that break down, never really go away, microplastics. So we're going to be working on that as a group. The other thing is I want to thank Scott Anders, Public Works Director, for his work on the weekend when most people are off from work, out there putting up signs and making our roadways at least safer for people to be aware of flooded road conditions. So thanks, Scott. That concludes my report.
All right.
Alderman Weddle.
Oh, thank you. I'll try to keep it shorter than Mr. Grant's. First of all, I'd like to recognize that it is the Marine Corps' birthday, and I thank all those that have served for their service. And also thank you for everybody that came out to vote. It was really nice to put a name with a face. That was really nice. I did attend the North Carolina Byways Conference. The networking down there is invaluable. It's just, I talked to so many engineers one-on-one, asked questions that pertain to the town. And again, putting names with a face, trying to give real positive thoughts to them about our town, so that if our town ever comes across their desk, they're happy with us, hopefully. While we were down there, that's when the nor'easter started to hit. We were alerted by a citizen that the northernmost access where you can drive on could be a danger during times like that. It was actually Cameron who had been here earlier. That was great to get citizen involvement by that. We were out of town. It was nice, and the police would have gotten to us, but it was nice to know that somebody was down there that said, hey, this ought to be closed. So that was really good. As for the nor'easter, I was out with Alderman Mike Benson. I don't know if I should call you Alderman Mike, Alderman Benson.
Mike's good.
Okay.
I like that.
We were out there on the 7th, and the town manager came right out with us and saw firsthand some of the big washovers and exactly what was happening. I was really proud that the town manager and the staff came out, really got right on top of it, put up the high water signs. We saw a lot, including the kittens that were rescued. The next day I walked several sections of the beach. I walked from the point up to Bass Bay Port. But then I also walked down at the Surf City line, down at Reeve Street, 13th Avenue, Myrtle Drive, and Onslow Beach access. For every place had a little bit of damage to the beach, some at the north end, worse than others. But I was really happy that the dunes did what they were supposed to do. We suffered a lot of sand loss, but it was what would have happened if we hadn't done those dune projects. Like I said, the dunes did what they were supposed to do. So it was good that we didn't lose any infrastructure. We didn't lose any roads. We didn't lose any homes. We lost one beach access. So while we're never going to fix the beach permanently, we can maintain it. And I think the maintenance that we've been doing has been good. And I'm glad to know that we're going to continue doing it with our, the one that's coming up soonest is the beach hall on the 16th. as Parks and Rec Committee that Susan and I were still working on it. In fact, I talked to a woman about it yesterday too. We still have interest slowly coming in, but that'll be up and underway. And I just want to thank everybody and thank you for coming out tonight.
Alderman Leonard.
Okay. I'll also like to thank Public Works for the great job this past weekend through the nor'easter. Good job. I want to wish everybody an early happy Thanksgiving. And obviously, I'm going to wish everyone a happy birthday who's connected with the world's finest fighting force, the United States Marine Corps, celebrating the 246th anniversary of its founding today, November the 10th. And we have a number of Marines in our various town departments. And I'd like to extend a special happy birthday and Semper Fi to each one of them. I'd also like to wish all of our town's veterans a happy Veterans Day tomorrow. And again, we have a significant number of military veterans on our staff and in our town departments. And I'd like to wish each one of them a happy Veterans Day. And I'd also like to wish a very special happy Veterans Day to our former manager and my good friend, Dave Gilbride. Finally, on a somber note, as a town, we observe another important date this month. We have a street up in the north end named Gunnery Sergeant D.W. Boatman Drive. There's also a plaque on the wall of our old town hall commemorating the dedication of the street in his memory. Gunnery Sergeant Darrell Boatman died on November 4th, 2005 at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany from wounds that he sustained on November 2nd, 2005 from an improvised explosive device while conducting combat operations in the vicinity of the village of Habaniya, Iraq. He was a member of the 8th Engineering Support Battalion, 2nd Marine Logistics Group out at Camp Lejeune. And Gunnery Sergeant Boatman left behind a wife and 2 children. Semper Fidelis, Gunny, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so with that, I need a motion to go into closed session. Do I have a second?
Well, pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, that's memorized.
Mhm. Let me read it.
Yes, please.
To consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged.
Pursuant to General Statute 143-381.183.
Yep. Okay. Everybody's kicked out. Yep. Good? So do we have a motion from the board to come out of closed session?
We did that.
I know, we don't have to
We've
do that
already done
again. Okay, well then we're back
You
and
have to
open.
announce what
No,
happened in closed
yes, I
session
understand.
when we-
So we're back in open session and no action was taken in closed session. So the next item would be Tom's favorite one for tonight, which
So
would,
moved.
all right, adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.